December 11, 1861. I was out in the woods chopping with Charles Knowlton, and we was just thinking of going home for the night when Lieutenant George S. Darling came out to where we was working, seeking for recruits. And as I had been wanting to enlist, this was just the opportunity, so I took his pencil and paper upon an oak stump and made myself a soldier for 3 years in Company F, 31st Regiment.
So begins the diary of Richard F. Underwood of Belchertown, just one of scores of manuscripts of Civil War diaries, letters, and personal recollections of members of the 31st Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiment that were rediscovered in 2014. Comprised mainly of troops from the 4 western counties of Massachusetts, the unit, originally known as the Western Bay State Regiment, was the first to enter and occupy New Orleans in 1862. From then until the end of the war, the unit was stationed in and around Louisiana, having participated in the siege of Port Hudson, the Red River Campaign, Sabine Crossroads, and other actions. The manuscripts were found in the archives of the Lyman and Mary Wood Museum of Springfield History in Springfield, Massachusetts. They had been collected in the early 1900s by the regimental historian Louis Frederick Rice, with the purpose of publishing a regimental history which was never completed. In 1929, the documents were donated by the dwindling Regimental Veterans Association to the Connecticut Valley Historical Society, whose collection was absorbed by the current museum. The collection, which includes more than 50 manuscripts written by more than 30 individuals, remained unprocessed until 2014. In that year, a Louisiana historian who uses the moniker Foxhole Frank contacted the archives in search of more information about the 31st Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. This led to the rediscovery of 6 boxes of diaries, letters, reminiscences, and photographs, most of which had been transcribed and typewritten, but never published. With grant money from the Massachusetts Sesquicentennial Commission of the American Civil War, a website honoring the unit was created, and most of the collection was scanned and uploaded. The recruits for the regiment enlisted in the final months of 1861 for 3 years' service, but a high proportion re-enlisted and served for the duration of the war. These men were recruited from all walks of life, from farmers and mechanics to Amherst College students. Comprised mainly of young men from the 4 western counties of Massachusetts, the unit was initially known as the Western Bay State Regiment, and it was trained at the newly created Camp Seward in Pittsfield. The Underwood Diary continues.
December 12th. Left home in the morning early for the depot. It came hard to leave home, I can tell you. I left Belchertown at 2 o'clock to go to Camp Seward in Pittsfield. I got there about 4 in the afternoon, tired out with my long ride. It was my first riding on a rail. The 31st were encamped in agricultural buildings on the top of a cold, bleak hill. I was homesick enough on my first night in camp. I had to sleep on a board, and only 1 blanket for 3 of us. I caught a cold that night that never went off till I was far down in Dixie.
This unit, and another recruited mainly from the eastern part of Massachusetts and dubbed the Eastern Bay State Regiment, were formed under the auspices of Benjamin Franklin Butler, a Lowell attorney and politician. Everything about Ben Butler was controversial. He was gracious and polite, but had a knack for getting under people's skin. He was already a wealthy attorney before the war, financing the creation of 2 regiments with his own money, yet he openly despised the arrogance and pomposity of the wealthy class. He was considered a stern taskmaster, yet he deeply cared about those in need. Later, the citizens of New Orleans, over whom he ruled under martial law, would hate him, but even his critics admit that he effectively fed the people, cleaned up the city, improved the public health, and got the economy functioning, in under 1 year and without a blueprint to guide him. Many under his command were devoted to him. In fact, one reason why Butler was put in command of the New Orleans expedition was to get him away from Massachusetts Governor John Andrew and Union General George McClellan, both of whom disliked Butler immensely. New Orleans was far away. So the 31st Massachusetts Infantry was part of a force that was given the mission to capture and hold New Orleans for the Union. The regiment sailed from Boston on February 20th, 1862, and after an arduous journey, which included being run aground on 2 different occasions and having the hull of their ship punctured and hastily repaired, they arrived at Ship Island off the Mississippi coast on March 23rd. After 2 Confederate forts blocking the mouth of the Mississippi River fell to Union gunboats, the path was clear for taking New Orleans. By May 1st, the Crescent City was under Union occupation, and General Butler was in command of the city. The 31st Massachusetts was the first regiment to enter New Orleans. Asa Wheeler described the event in his diary.
May 1st. As we came up to the wharf, an excitement commenced until a dense crowd had gathered as far as the eye could see. But soon we were called to clear the wharf so that our regiment could land. Company D had the honor of landing first, which they did in a short time, and soon we stood face to face with the Rebs, and started off into the city, which was done in fine style, and arrived at the custom house, and entered, glad to get a place to rest upon. But my dreams were dashed, for at 10 p.m. I was detailed to go on guard, and so took my first night, when off duty, sleeping on the soft side of a stone, without any blanket to protect me from the drenching dew. Here we were, 2,000 miles from home, surrounded by those who, could they have had a chance, would have put us to death without a thought of the consequence.
Capturing New Orleans proved easier than holding it, however, as the brash and controversial Butler soon learned. He was wildly unpopular with the leading citizens of New Orleans during his reign, and he was soon dubbed the Beast. Among his more infamous moves was to pass General Order No. 28, which threatened to punish any woman who insulted, by word or gesture, any Union soldier, by treating her as a woman of the town plying her avocation. This and other notorious policies of General Butler inspired, among the classier rebel families, the placing of his image in the bottom of their chamber pots. The regiment was stationed in and around Louisiana for most of the war, participating in the siege of Port Hudson, and saw action at Bayou Teche and Sabine Crossroads in the disastrous Red River Campaign. Curiously, at one point, the 31st Massachusetts was temporarily re-outfitted as a cavalry unit and given horses. Through all this, the soldiers noted with relish the country and the people around them. Asa Wheeler's diary continues.
I cannot explain to one who has not been down in Dixie one half of the beauties of many of the beautiful residences of New Orleans, houses hidden by the magnolia, which when in bloom has one of the most fragrant odors to arise therefrom of any flower at the South. It has a simple petal and is as large as a teacup in diameter. And then there are flowers in bloom at all times of the year. Oranges are found in great quantities from the bud, flower, green fruit, half-ripe, and ripe upon the same tree all at the same time. Oranges are selling at various prices, some for 3 cents, others at a picayune or 5 cents, or 3 for a bit, which is 10 cents.
The personal accounts contained in the 31st Massachusetts Infantry Collection and the website built from it show the humanity of these young men experiencing the most difficult, trying, and yet exciting time of their lives. Their observations and recollections give us a depth of feeling that cannot be conveyed otherwise. The collection is housed at the Lyman and Mary Wood Museum of Springfield History, just off the Quadrangle in Springfield. It should be noted that the website contains a great history of the regiment written by the late local historian Larry Lowenthal. Having worked for the National Park Service at several Civil War battlefield parks, and having a deep interest in the history of western Massachusetts, Lowenthal was the perfect person to bring this regimental history to life for the general reader. His new book, based largely on the research he performed for this project, was published shortly before his death in March of 2020. The book is entitled A Yankee Regiment in Confederate Louisiana and is available from LSU Press. We'll give Private Goodwin the last word.
The war is over, and we can only fight imaginary battles now. And to me they are fully as enjoyable, though I did like it after I got warmed up. But as a general thing, I did not have much craving for military glory. As the Irishman said, he would rather be a coward all his life than a dead hero an hour. We are fast being mustered out. Every year now will thin our ranks. Soon Butler's pets will be among the things that were. May we fall in the better land, and be all present or accounted for.